After I build this fire, I'm going to paint it with watercolor markers and watercolor pencils. I'm starting this sketch out with some water-soluble ink in this Fude fountain pen. I like the neutral gray color as it won't detract from the colors that I'll add later on. And I'm working on getting a good drawing of that rock fire ring first. Those rocks are really cool, but I won't draw each one, but I do want to get the perspective correct. It will be a relaxing evening sitting by the fire while I wait for our dinners to cook, and we need some pretty hot coals for that. Even though this pen is a pretty light gray, I'm going to make notes where the darkest darks will be, which is mostly in between those rocks and of course the burnt wood. But since the rocks themselves are pretty light, I'll darken everything around it. I forgot my pencil sharpener, but I did have a pocket knife, so it seemed appropriate that I'd sharpen the pencil the old-fashioned way. It's a watercolor pencil, so I'll be able to add a water to it in a bit to get some paint-like effects. This paper is a canvas paper, has a rough surface and a gesso-like treatment, which should allow me to get some really interesting blending and textures. The rocks are neither gray nor pink, so I'm going to add various colors to this in an attempt to blend a similar color to what I'm seeing. This color is a sepia tone. Since that ink is water soluble as well, it will blend with everything too. The flies are kind of bad here, so you'll see them occasionally. They were biting me, but I think they'll be fine on the other side of that screen. The green grasses in the background will be interesting to paint. Even though it's fairly light out now, the sun will set soon, so the background will get darker and darker as we go on. So I don't think I'll fuss with it too much yet. I'm not even sure it'll stay green. This is obviously not green, but like I said earlier, there'll be lots of fun blending and textures to come. But first we need to eat dinner. We wrapped some frozen burritos in aluminum foil and they've been warming up on those hot coals. It's a simple and quick meal. I opted for the breakfast burrito and it was really good too. But back to that painting. You can see the colors lightened quite a bit when they dried, but I like the overall feel I have so far. And I'll continue to layer on those colors, as I wonder how I'm going to paint those flames. I've never really done it before. We have more fresh logs. Huh?
No, that's it.
That's it? That's okay. I just wondered if there was a later chance for a bigger flame, but it's fine. I'm going to use watercolor markers to get some of these really saturated colors of those coals in the flames, but I am fairly tentative. Watching the flames I can see there are red and oranges and yellows and even some whites, so I'll try to get them all down in a way that makes sense. It'll be a lot of trial and error. One of the tricks of getting things to look bright is to have a lot of dark, so I think I'll go back to getting those darks by working on the burnt log. As with most of my sketches, this is pretty much trial and error, and there are some things happening that I like how it's turning out, and some things not so much. I sometimes wonder if practicing art in front of you all on YouTube is a good idea, but I'm having fun doing it, and thinking of cool places to go and sketch is part of the fun. Maybe some of this is helpful for your creativity practice. Who knows? Let me know. I really do like exploring and discovering new art techniques and new places. I've never been here before, and we're pretty high up in the mountains in this beautiful area, and we'll be spending the night in our one-man tents, one for each of us. Since it's getting darker by the minute, it's obvious that the light is changing quickly, but so is that fire. The log I was drawing will burn away and new ones will be added. Since everything is constantly changing at some point, I just need to be inspired by what I'm looking at rather than trying to capture exactly what I'm seeing. And man, these flies are really bad. But that's what you get when you paint outside. Here I'm finally adding some of the green color for all that grass, but after I wet it, I found out that it was way more bluish than I intended. I guess that's one reason people suggest you test your colors on a different paper before you put them down. But no biggie, I know I can mix some other colors with it to tone it down. That's one reason it's good to learn about color mixing. I know if I add some red to this green, it'll make it more grayish. But for this, I'll keep it loose when I do, and let some of that bright green peek through. I think it'll ultimately keep it interesting. Overall, I'm just trying to get the areas outside of the fire ring darker and darker to make the fire look brighter and brighter inside the ring. Also, I'm trying to make those rocks look more three-dimensional by adding the shadows in. They kind of have a weird lighting effect with this fire. The light is coming from the center, but there is also some ambient light from the sky reflecting off the rocks, which are kind of white to begin with. There are also black areas on the rocks from the soot, but they are all lit up by the fire. So, since I'm not sure how to handle it perfectly, I'm just trying to make it look believable. I heard a professional artist say once, "If it looks right, it is right." That's pretty good advice. And for these flames, I have a start to the colors, but I have a trick up my sleeve to help with that. For now, I'm just trying to observe what I'm seeing. The flames kind of jump around a lot, and they look wispy at times, and other times they're more substantial. I guess it depends on how much wood is added to the fire. Since it isn't consistent throughout the evening, I think I'll just go with what looks believable and adjust as I go. If it looks right, it is right. The trick I alluded to earlier is the white Posca pen. I used it for the first time in my last video, and I liked how it worked, so I'm trying it again. And as far as getting these flames to look right, I studied how flames were handled by other artists in their paintings after I got home, and I'll adjust this even more a bit later on. But for now, I'm just using the white to get some of the brightness back. And some of the ashes under that log are really quite white as well. I really like using the Posca brush pen as a way to start over on the dark areas. But fire isn't white, so I'm going to use watercolor markers for a quick way to get some color back. I think the flames might be a little bit too wispy, but as I like to say, I'm just learning as I go. As you probably guessed, sketching by a fire can be really relaxing. It was easy to lose track of time and get lost in the process, and I guess that's exactly what I was after. Drawing these flames and rocks is kind of fun. Making them look right is a challenge, but I think I'm getting really close. I mentioned earlier that I would use red to tone down that bluish green in the grass, but as it got darker and darker outside, I decided that a reddish blue, also known as purple, would look cool too. I think it captures the feel of this place pretty well. When I get back home, I decided I wanted the flames to be a bit more robust, not as wispy, so I hit it with the Posca pen again. It was interesting, because I found the acrylic paint blended a bit with the colors below it when it re-wet them. That was a surprising effect, and I'll experiment with that more in the future, I think. As before, there was no problem putting the colors back on top either. So, this was all a really cool experiment, and I learned a bunch, and I hope you did too. Thanks for hanging out and exploring art with me, and here's another video that you might not have seen.